All right, guys. It is October 3rd, 2025, and a little bit different here. We're going to talk about Canadian politics. I have Yves Engler, and Yves Engler is running for the leadership of the New Democratic Party, the NDP. And today, on October 30th, I believe around now, the time we're speaking is 9. They have dropped the campaign has dropped their platform, NDP 2026. The title is Capitalism Can't Be Fixed, Onward to a Socialist Future. And I want to talk to Yves, especially because of Palestine. And, Yves, you've been so active on Gaza. Um, and so, it's really good to see someone trying to go into politics without changing their perspective on Palestine. Usually that's understood in the West as the prerequisite is you have to sell Palestine out and then try to make your run in politics. But so first of all, just tell me about this run, how you decided to do it, and what you're hoping to achieve, and how it's been going so far. I know they've blocked venues. I know you've had to have events outside of venues and things like that. So just tell me, like, from inception to now, how's this thing going?
Yeah, about 4 months ago, Barry Weislitter from the Socialist Caucus reached out asking me if I would run in the NDP leadership race to as the Socialist Caucus candidate. And honestly, my first reaction was just to sort of dismiss it and tell Barry that thanks for asking. Very busy. This is just not on my radar at all. And I'll get back to you in a week. About a week, 10 days later, he called again. I didn't get back to him, and he called again, and he prodded it, and I said, "Let me think about it a little bit more." And then a few days later, I said, "Okay, let's do this." And the initial thinking was the aim was to sort of push the debate within the leadership race to the left to bring out some ideas that aren't being discussed. And so yeah, started from that. And to be honest with you, I thought this was like a one in a 10,000 chance of actually winning. Now, what's happened over the past basically 3 months since we officially launched is that there is a surprising amount of support and steam. There's we have we The NDP brought in this very high financial threshold. You have to pay the party $100,000 to participate in the race. And the last race was in 2017 when they had many more MPs in the House of Commons. It was $30,000, but they bumped that up to 100,000. The previous race was 15,000. So that was viewed as a way to for the party to raise money, but also as a way to exclude sort of left insurgent candidacies. We've in 3 weeks of fundraising, we're over 80,000 raised. We won't have any problem hitting the financial threshold. You don't have to pay it all until about another 3 or 4 months. We far surpassed the nomination signatures. It's with all the different criteria, more than doubled that. And there's, I think, a bit over 1,000 people that have signed up to volunteer. Hundreds of people have put in tens of hours. Dozens of people have put in hundreds of hours. And we've done about 15 cities in terms of speaking events already. We've obviously, website. We got committees dealing with all kinds of different issues. So it really has become a real campaign that it's certainly. I don't think that we're the front runners to win, but if the party actually allows us to formally be part of the race, we do have a real shot at winning. And I'm certain that we've already influenced the debate. And if we're formally allowed in the race, we will influence the debate even more. And so, yeah, it's been kind of surprising. There's obviously been a backlash. There's been right from the get-go. There were lots of different anti-Palestinian forces saying that the NDP has to kick me out of the race before the race had even formally begun, and those voices have continued, and they've even been able to cancel a couple venues that we booked for speaking events.
So I want to talk about this platform because in Western politics and Canadian politics, I'd say, the first things you have to do to get into a mainstream party are, sell out the Palestinians first and foremost. And in Canada, it's Indigenous peoples as well. And so, the first thing I always check when I see a platform, which is the same thing I did with yours here, is the section on Indigenous peoples, which is titled "Anti-Colonialism and Land Back." And the first sentence is anti-colonialism is the fundamental moral imperative that forms the basis of the international socialist movement. So why don't you talk about I'll just ask you that question, like how do you understand the relationship between a political party like the NDP with its history and the First Nations, the Indigenous peoples uh, of this continent and of, Turtle Island?
Well, the first part is the NDP and its predecessor CCF have been obviously part of the dispossession, the genocide against Indigenous people, and that's fairly well documented and very active even until very recently. The NDP government in BC with the Gustafson Lake and sending in militarized police, but probably also even the Joint Task Force 2 special forces. Is that's the history of the party, and it's been one of dispossession. So it has to obviously stop, and it has to stop immediately. And the how you do that though is not there are many different First Nations that need to be negotiated with or treated as nations, and so it's a relationship in that sense. But the big picture is first of all anti-colonialism, and centrally important, of course, is land back. Justin Trudeau and Liberal politicians are pretty good at talking about a sort of truth and reconciliation, or this sort of rhetorical kind of the past was bad and we need to move forward kind of rhetoric. But the fundamental colonial process was land theft. So that has to be, there has to be return of the land. And that has to be negotiated with different First Nations. And that in and of itself is obviously not completely straightforward, because as part of the colonial process, we destroyed Indigenous governance, and we created governance structures that were designed to serve our colonial objectives. So it's not an easy process of undoing that, but you have to begin at least with speaking to reality and working with having some general objectives, and that includes working with traditional Indigenous governance structures, and the band council structure is one that's obviously colonial.
Yeah, and I noticed also there's support for what you call educational and cultural resurgence, which is also reversing the direction of the trend in Canada, which is like constantly taking over First Nations educational institutions and kind of defunding them or attacking them or taking them over directly. Do you want to talk a little bit about just that side of things as well?
Yeah, well, we need to allow and assist Indigenous communities to shape their cultures and define their cultures, and quite honestly, impose their on the
Hmm.
whole Canadian educational system. Uh,
Hmm.
and that would include, of course, language. One of the hopes is to have this platform translated into at least one Indigenous language. It's being discussed and worked on. But there needs to be we destroyed Indigenous people, and we continue to. I mean, even just a couple of days ago was the Orange Shirt Day around the residential schools and the cultural genocide. Well, there's more Indigenous kids in government care today, care in quotes, control than during the height of the residential schools. So that process of destroying Indigenous familial and educational and linguistic rights or continues. So that has to be expunged, that has to be understood, that has to be challenged. And I don't think any of this is easy, but you have to begin by calling it as it is, and working to end that process.
Yeah, and the other 2 points that I want to like emphasize that I noticed is like you want, instead of a free, prior, and informed consent, which is basically like a whole process that mining companies use to subvert, to ensure that they get access to the land, to indigenous lands. You are calling for a moratorium on these kinds of projects until these claims are, um, you know, settled. And then the other one that I wanted to say is like just the kind of theoretical basis of nation to nation relations, which is what you always hear indigenous nations call for.
The trampling on Indigenous rights and extraction, and that is taking place in a context of colonial domination. So the notion of
Mhm.
free, informed, prior consent
Yeah, exactly.
is it is sort of theoretically kind of a good idea, but
Right.
what are the power relations? And you
That's
see
right.
that with even in Indigenous communities that fought valiant struggles against the tar
Mhm.
sands extraction, and they've been basically beaten down
Yeah.
to accept what they did everything they could to not accept. And even today they're sort of can be brought into some of the capitalist colonial kind of project. But yeah, so there has to be that, and also from the standpoint, from obviously a justice standpoint, but also from the standpoint of ecology, and where we're
Mhm.
going with this whole extractivist destruction of Mother Earth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really think that this is one of the first kind of platforms I've seen that doesn't have uh, that level of paternalism that you see from, frankly, from the NDP and every other mainstream party too, you know. So I really appreciate that. So let's talk about Palestine, because I think I have this hypothesis, Eve, that a lot of the momentum that you are experiencing in terms of support is because, everybody, a lot of the NDP now has this lip service, but ultimately covert support for Israel, and or not covert, not even a covert in a lot of cases. And you're well known as a Palestine activist long before, um, running for the NDP, and that's not something you're like now trying to, sweep under the rug. It's actually a big part of what you're running for. And I think that's a lot of why people support you. So do you want to talk about once again, the first point under peace, that what you have several sections, but the section the sections that I looked for first were justice, equality, anti-colonization, and peace, solidarity, and anti-imperialism. And so under peace, solidarity, and anti-imperialism, again, the first bullet point is end Canada's support for genocide in Palestine. So you've been working on that for longer than the past 4 months. So what are the policy positions on this question?
Yeah, I think a lot of support comes from the fact that people are just stunned, appalled, traumatized from what
Yeah.
we're seeing every day for 2 years now. And the fact that the Canadian government and the whole political culture has very obviously enabled the endless, the live streamed Holocaust.
Yeah.
And so and I think there's a lot of people who are just taken aback. I mean, the whole system is kind of put into question by what they've been seeing, even if they haven't, thought that much theoretically about what capitalism is, or what, I don't know, imperialism is, or what colonization. I mean, varying degrees, right?
Yeah.
But people are just sort of like, wow, this is so horrible, and I'm just seeing it every day now. I'm what we've put forward is actually in some senses is quite, I mean, it's about upholding Canadian law,
Yeah.
and stop treating Israel as this unique special country. And I'm obviously supportive of across the board, from the armed resistance. Palestinians obviously have a right to armed resistance against the illegal occupation, colonial ruler. I'm supportive of the boycott, divestment, sanctions, but in the actual here and now of Canadian politics, if we just upheld Canadian law, we would go a huge way in ending Canadian complicity in these horrors. And so concretely, that's the Export-Import Act says that you're not allowed to sell weapons to a country engaged in massive human rights violations. Obviously, Israel's engaged in massive human rights violations, and there were bullets going. We have proof of that as recently as April to Israel, and many more, and probably still going on. The Canada Revenue Agency's rules around registered charities. There's about 300 of these groups that raise between $250 million and $500 million every year for projects in Israel. It's completely unique, right? Israel has a GDP per capita equivalent to Canada's, so we're not sending all kinds of resources to support hospitals in Sweden or in Japan or wherever. It's totally unique to Israel, and within that, there's dozens of these registered charities subsidized by all Canadian taxpayers that assist the Israeli military, assist municipalities, racist organizations, and West Bank settlements, all of which contravene existing CRA rules. It's not, we don't need new legislation. We should add new legislation to just ban it all, of course, but existing rules. So, and the most egregious example is the Hesek Foundation for Lone Soldiers, which has sent $200 million to assist non-Israelis, Torontonians, Montrealers, Parisians, New Yorkers that join the Israeli military. And they assist them in a whole bunch of different ways, mostly around supporting, subsidizing their education. And that's Heather Reisman and Jerry Schwartz, prominent owners of Onyx and Indigo, that have been given that money, and the CRA has never stepped in and said, no, the rules are absolutely crystal clear. It's contrary to CRA rules to support any foreign military. It's nothing to do with the crimes of the Israeli military. It's about nationalist Canadian logic, which says, well, we can subsidize our military, but we're not going to subsidize another country's military. But they won't uphold the rules there. With regards to the Foreign Enlistment Act, there's a school in Toronto where a quarter of the graduates are going to the Israeli military. The Foreign Enlistment Act says it's illegal to induce, that's the word they use, Canadians to join another country's military. Again, nothing to do with Israel. It's a general nationalistic logic. The War Crimes, Crimes Against Humanity Act. There's been dozens, almost certainly hundreds of Canadians that have fought in Gaza, as well as dozens, probably hundreds of Israelis who fought in Gaza who've come to Canada. We should be prosecuting these people. We should be at least investigating. But you need the okay of the justice minister. So that's a big part of what we focused on. Now, going more broadly into the unique elements, and one of the things that the NDP's gotten better on Palestine over the past 2 years, right? Now you at least have a rhetorical "we're against genocide" from pretty much throughout the party. There's still forces sort of quietly trying to restrain and all that kind of stuff, but officially they've become sort of critical. That's been a lot of work over many decades that people have done there. But for instance, the anti-Palestinian terrorism list, right? 11 months ago, the Trudeau government listed the Samidoun Palestinian Political Prisoners Network as a banned terrorist organization. Basically, it's a grassroots group in Vancouver that even the most outlandish Zionists didn't claim they were involved in any violence. The only claim was that they supported the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, which itself, quite honestly, hasn't been involved in much armed resistance in recent years, but has historically been. So basically, they listed a grassroots group because they claimed to have connection to another group that was already listed. Now they're going a step further, and they're saying new legislation that Carney's announced about 2 weeks ago that if you fly a flag or wave a symbol of a listed organization, terrorist organization, in front of a community center or religious institution where Benjamin Netanyahu may be speaking or an Israeli general may be speaking, they could throw you into jail for 10 years. Well, the NDP hasn't responded to this at all, right? One of the candidates the most leftward candidate aside from me in the race was in Vancouver during this whole time, never said anything about Samidoun being listed, in part because the BC NDP government, the premier immediately came out, David Eby came out applauding the listing of a solidarity group on Canada's terrorism list. So if you just started treating Israel like a normal right-wing ally, as I've said, if you started treating Israel as Canada's treated Colombia, maybe pre-recent government over the past 40 years, that would go a long way into delivering a message to the Israeli government and ending Canadian complicity in all the horrors we're seeing.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that this is one of the more disgraceful things about Canadian politics, I find, is, you're running for federal NDP. So you have the federal politics includes having opinions and analyses of what's going on in other countries. But you get these mayors and premiers talking about what's going on in Palestine and declaring their support for Israel. And it's not like they're not elected for that. That's got nothing to do with their jobs. And yeah, anyways, it's gross.
Well,
So
David Eby, the premier of BC, the NDP premier of BC, who applauded the listing, he was, I think, a former head of the BC Civil Liberties Association, which has come out condemning all this. So he knows that this is like a total violation. Drop the anti-Palestinian character; it's just a violation of civil liberties of all Canadians, and that's just what the political culture, requires.
Yeah, there's a complete carve out for Zionism in Israel of all exception to all normal regulatory frameworks. So, there's one other thing I wanted to make sure we cover, which is like you did a really good tweet yesterday. And it was kind of like about like kind of culture war issues. And I think it's really good that to my mind, it's really good that you're just kind of shutting this down because like I see several ways to attack a left-wing campaign. Palestine is one, the pro-Israel kind of people trying to get in there, co-opt it, etc. And then this other one is these culture wars. And so, I think the kind of culture war position that right-wing infiltrators often take is like working class people don't care about LGBTQ and working class people don't care about feminism or whatever it is. They want jobs and socialism, but they don't want you to get distracted by all of this. And you had this tweet where you said, the path to victory is not found by compromising on our commitments to anti-racism, anti-colonialism, and justice for 2S LGBTQ plus communities. You cannot outflank the right wing on the cultural battlefield they created. Trying to do so only legitimizes their hateful narratives and asks the most marginalized among us to pay the price for electoral ambition. So do you want to just talk about this and like how you, um, to put it in a leading way, like how you kind of chose to sidestep this kind of trap, this culture war trap that I'm sure is waiting for you, and it'll come up probably again during your run.
Yeah, well, first of all, this was all kind of prompted by Heather McPherson, the sort of most establishment NDP leadership candidate, making this reference to purity test in her launch, I guess about a week ago, where she formally announced. And then another NDP MP, Leah Gazan, responding to this critically, correctly, and so this kind of debate of you stand with people oppressed, and solidarity is absolutely essential. And the notion of sort of, I don't know, that if you're going to defend workers, white male workers at being screwed over by General Motors, that you have to exclude
Right.
people who are being, facing white supremacy or racism. It's all, it's kind of an odd kind of argument. But the big picture, I think, is that first of all, you have to have a project of challenging the dominant power structure and offering better lives through enhancement across the board. And that's, improved social entitlements, that's improved workplace democracy, that's just, strengthening everything we can do towards challenging capitalist entitlement. And that is the I think the big picture political aim. That's what economic democracy is about in my mind, and that's what we're pushing forward. And so it's the sort of framing that it's not 100% clear if Heather McPherson was completely meaning her purity test in the sense of she's somebody who's come out in favor of the tar sand or the Trans Mountain pipeline, so she supports tar sands. And Rachel Notley, the former premier of Alberta, was there at her launch and is a central supporter. So it's not 100% clear what she was really meaning with her purity test kind of remarks. But it's very clearly a sort of reactionary agenda that is designed to legitimate I guess I don't know, throwing the most marginalized under the bus, I guess, would be one way of framing that. And what we're saying is we have a big picture liberatory, emancipatory project that we're putting forward, and we want people to actually take the time and read the platform, to read what we're offering, rather than just sort of sound bites of tidbits here and there, which is clearly what Heather McPherson is offering, and I think that to a lesser extent the other two main candidates as well.
Yeah. So wait, did she say she wants a purity test, or she doesn't want a purity test?
Doesn't want a purity test. There shouldn't be a purity test.
Right. So having actual politics is a purity test, I guess.
But Heather McPherson is, I've written a couple of these, but she applauded, of course, former SS fighter Yaroslav Hunka in the
Right, right.
House of Commons. She applauded a real Nazi, a literal Nazi. She's on the NATO Parliamentary Association. She's a member of that. She's gone to a trilateral commission in 2022, the CIA-influenced trilateral commission. She's come out in favor of the Trans Mountain pipeline against the rest of the party. She's gotten a sort of a pro-Palestine kind of aura to her recently, because she has been vocal, as I put it, vocally tepid on Palestine out of sort of pressure. But as late as June 11th, she did an event with Erwin Kotler, and she's been applauding Erwin Kotler, celebrating him for 2-3 years. So she's I mean, I could, this is from my standpoint, I'm raising this in part because there's a whole push to block me from being allowed to run, and that would be based upon not fulfilling the values of the party. This small committee gets to decide what the values of the party are, not the actual membership. The first phase is vetting. And so I'm raising this as like, I've never, whatever you want to say about me, I've never like applauded a literal. See, I'm not, meeting and celebrating the most important apartheid genocide promoter in Canada over the past 50 years, Erwin Kotler. I'm not, meeting at the Trilateral Commission. But yeah, that's the sort of the range of debate or the nature of the establishment NDP kind of outlook.
So if you raise this money and you pass all these hurdles with the signatures and everything, there's a small committee that vets you?
Yes, there's a three-person committee that
A three-person
gets
committee.
to decide. And
How do you how do you get on that committee? Who gets on that committee?
The president of the party, she's on it, and then there's two others. I don't actually know what the exact process is, but the wording in the nomination package is really clear. I don't have it right in front of me, but that you uphold the values of the party, which is, I mean, completely vague. And in the nomination, the vetting package, they have a whole thing which we think is new to this year that says, have you been ever been suspended or expelled from university? And I, of course, was.
What?
I was.
Why would that have anything to do with?
So there's a whole bunch of questions and all kinds of things.
Are they gonna go? Is your name Yves Engler?
Well, that was the thinking, that there was definitely some things added with very specific. But to be fair about this, or more broad about it, this vetting thing has become just a total control across the board. I have all these people who've come out to events, like Peter Eglin, the prof at Wilfrid Laurier University, that this event I did 2 weeks ago. 40-year prof at Wilfrid Laurier. His wife's on the Kitchener City Council. His wife ran provincially for the NDP, and they asked him to run for the NDP federally in the Kitchener Centre the last election, and he put in for the vetting, and they just got back to him saying, there's too much. You've written too much over the years. They say, submit everything you've written, 40 years as a prof. They said, you've written too much, so we're just not even going to vet you, which was another way of saying you had stood up for Palestine at some point, and we don't want you in this race. But there's just all this power and in the hands of the party bureaucracy. So yeah, they have all kinds of grounds to kick me out. They could claim, like B'nai B'rith did a whole thing that I'm a Rwanda genocide denier. They cited an article I wrote in 2017 going that direction. Is obviously people who do the anti-Semitism smear direction. There's people who do he's a Putinist direction. There's a whole bunch of different directions that they can claim to block. But basically, what we've done is we've sort of avoided step one. Step one, according to the party's preferred mechanism, is to become vetted. what we've done is we've done step 2 and step 3
Okay.
completely by the rules, but not the sort of what they would want or the standard procedure. And so we've fulfilled the nomination signatures, and we've gotten most of the way down on the money as a way to show that we have support, momentum, and that a perception that we're part of the race, making it more difficult for them to just vet us out and say, oh, he would never have been able to raise the money. He wouldn't have got enough
Hmm.
signatures, or sort of try to create some impression that it was always just a fringe kind of candidacy or campaign. And so we've done that. Now, to participate in the leadership debates, you have to have been vetted. And so that's basically the time crunch that we're running up against. So we're about to put forward to the vetting, because we want to participate in the leadership debates. And to do so, you have to have been vetted. And then you have to have given them 50,000 of the 100,000 to participate in the debate.
So how this all sounds very democratic, very, very democratic to me. But good luck nonetheless, Eve. My goodness. I would not want to force you to appear to on a show where we were maligning the democratic credentials of the party that you're going to run for. So I take back everything that I said, and I'm sure there is a lot of democracy, and
And
I wish the committee the best um, as they um, uh, as they deliberate on whether or not you fulfill the values. I think you fulfill the values, and I am a member of the NDP. I joined relatively recently, coinciding somewhat. Anyway, we don't need to get into those details. It was perfectly legal my joining of the NDP. So yeah, so good luck with the next steps, Eve. Is there anything else you wanted to cover from the platform or that you wanted to kind of tell people to do? Any call to action? Most of the people that listen, I think, are American, but there is a good 10-20% that are in Canada. So,
yeah, I mean, take a look at the platform that, and I should state that this was done, and I'm very proud of this. This was done in a really open, democratic, activist manner. This was 45 people on the policy committee that uh, broke into subcommittees on different themes and just like worked it through. It took over 2 months of this work. Some people put amazing amounts of work into it, and I think it's not perfect, but it is for what electoral politics are. This is, I think, a big step forward, and it's worth taking a look at, even if you're not in Canada. It's, I think, maybe has some things that people elsewhere would be interested in, and also again the mechanism of how it came about. That this is not a top-down campaign. This is grassroots activist campaign, and it's been very enjoyable and inspiring to be part of it. And people can check that out on Eve for NDP leader.ca.
okay. Thanks a lot, Eve.
Thank you.
Let's stay in touch.
Thanks.